Reddit. What's the scariest theory known to mankind? That we will use up all the readily accessible resources, and that if we fail to make it to the stars with our present civilization, humanity will die here on the earth, as following generations will be forced to work harder for diminishing resources. Not sure if I would say it is scary, more of holy shit if true, but the theory of the Fermi paradox, that there have been millions or more of civilizations throughout time, intelligent, and they have all failed to pass a particular threshold in life, whether they are killed due to comets, asteroids, natural disasters, or their own undoing, nuclear war, which suggests we likely will face the same fate, or the fact that single-cell life, through some combination of events, allowed it to become multicellular, and turned into intelligent, and that we are the first and only life that has surpassed this threshold previously mentioned. Two possibilities exist: either we are alone in the universe or we are not. Both are equally terrifying. Arthur C. Clarke. One of the theories of the Drake equation is that we do not find aliens because cultures tend to destroy themselves as they get increasingly more destructive weapons. Forget the name, but the idea that there are fourth-dimensional hyperbeings existing around us that we cannot see, just as two-dimensional beings wouldn't be able to see us, but they're always there, always watching. But if I were a 3D cube in a 2D space, wouldn't part of the universe cut me, thus projecting a small 2D part of me, a square? Wouldn't we be able to at least see part of them? If by see you mean detect, then yes, definitely, but perhaps not with our current tech. There is also no guarantee we would understand what we were detecting, as it would have the ability to travel on a fourth-dimensional line between locations, and is in no way obligated to take on a shape we know life to make. Yeah, we'd probably come up with some weird name to describe this matter we can detect but not interact with. Probably something stupid like dark matter. Well, I don't see any 2D critters here, so I guess we're good. Turns on TV and happily munches popcorn. Good, we are someone's entertainment. The Great Filter, an extension of the Fermi paradox. There are large events that filter out which species make it. Humanity has either made it past more than almost anything else in the galaxy, or we've yet to hit it, and the human race will crumble in the foreseeable future. The dark forest explanation from the three-border problem is scarier, and it's basically a subtype of the Fermi paradox. The basic idea being that because civilizations and life expand exponentially, but the mass in the universe does not change, produces competition for resources, the great distances in space, interspecies communications barriers, creating a chain of suspicion, and the promise of rapid technological advancement make it almost certain that first contact, ideally one-sided, you know about them, but they don't know about you, is most safely resolved by attempting to exterminate the civilization completely, or by finding some way to eternally prevent their advancement. This creates a galactic dark forest with civilizations creeping through them like hunters, hoping never to be found, and ready to throw dozens of RKKVs at anyone they see. That would explain why we can't see many aliens or haven't been visited, because everyone is trying their best to hide. Hopefully we haven't been spotted yet. It's worth noting that SETI accepts this theory enough that we have ceased to attempt first contact by broadcast. The stakes are far too high to risk doing that. Solipsism. A theory you cannot disprove. No matter how accurately we can map the brain and log what electrical signals fire when and where when you and I eat chocolate, even if our brain's activity is identical, we can never check whether or not we're experiencing the same sensations. Solipsism is this notion, but on steroids. One can never definitively prove that others are real, and not a figment of one's imagination, let alone whether or not they are experiencing anything as real, conscious beings like oneself. It's perfectly plausible that the I one experiences is the only conscious, thinking entity in existence. A lot of people seem to think this when they are stoned, or young, or both, it seems. Descartes was not a solipsist, he relied on God to ensure that we all exist consciously. I can't experience your consciousness, so therefore I can't prove that you're real. When I was about 7 or 8, I asked my mom in the car how I could know if she was real or if anyone was real besides me, and it kind of flustered her a little and she tried to rationalize it and spend some time explaining. Later on I asked my dad the same question. I'm real. Your mom's real. You're real. Now leave me alone. Fucking spot on, Dad. I actually remember this happening to me when I was 7 or 8. I was riding in the car with my sister, 1 year older, and my mom. My sister said something about how I hurt her feelings, and I actually said something along the lines of, wait, you're real. She said obviously, and her and my mom watched me, mouths dropped, as I explained that I never really realized other people actually existed. And how was I supposed to be positive that they weren't all in my head? TLDR. I lived the first 7 or 8 years thinking nobody was actually real except me. I used to have a theory when I was younger that everyone saw a different universe, and everyone else saw me as retarded, and I probably often yelled out everything I thought. Although not particularly scary, still pretty terrifying when you think about it. The Big Bounce theory. There's a Kurzgesagt video that goes into it briefly. YouTube webpage. What it states is that if the Big Bang occurred from nothing, then there will be no changing factor to make a difference in what is created when it happens. This means that when our universe ends and another is created, it will be created in the exact same way, with the exact same galaxies, planets, species and so on. If this is true, our entire universe is in an endless cycle of creating and destroying itself, and you will be born into every universe, endlessly. If so, I'm pretty happy with my position as a white Swedish male. Forever. Poor Aztec slaves and whatnot. Man, I was just gonna complain. But hey, you're right. Statistically speaking, I'm right up there at the top. Considering all the other possibilities, I'm surprisingly okay with that. That's good for you. Nietzsche referred to this as the eternal recurrence. If you're in general happy with your life, that's great. Now imagine you're dirt poor, lonely, miserable, every insult, every loss, every tragedy, every ounce of pain happening again and again and again, with you being absolutely unable to control or change it. Enough iterations and it'll be even those same atoms that compose you now experiencing those same losses again and again. You will be trapped in agony forever. Personally, I subscribe to the heat death theory, wherein the universe will continue to expand and entropy will continue to do its thing until all matter decomposes into X-rays and background radiation. Considering the alternative, I prefer that. Except the person experiencing endless agony doesn't know they are, and there's no accumulation of agony. The wheel of time turns, and ages come and pass, leaving memories that become legend. Legend fades to myth, and even myth is long forgotten when the age that gave it birth comes again. Robert Jordan, The Wheel of Time. There are neither beginnings nor endings to the Wheel of Time, but it was a beginning. Astronomer checking in. Big crunch and big bounce type scenarios where the universe collapses back to reverse Big Bang are pretty strongly ruled out by observations we've taken over the past 2 decades. Right now, It seems like the more likely scenario is that the universe is going to continue expanding faster and faster as time moves forward. Depending on how dark energy behaves as the universe gets larger and larger, we might eventually end up with a boring situation where the observable universe contains only the local group of galaxies, us, Andromeda, and our satellites. No other galaxies would be visible. Or, in more fun scenarios, we'd undergo a big rip where everything, even atoms, is completely torn apart by dark energy. Vacuum decay. YouTube webpage. We could get poofed out of existence at any moment. I'll never be afraid of something that is just out of our hands. It's a waste of time. A bunch of crazy people able to use mass destruction weapons, now that is something I can be afraid of. I've only touched on this briefly in my dissertation, but as it's been explained to me, assuming that the Higgs measured in 2012 is the standard model Higgs couples to the top quark as predicted, we are in fact in a metastable universe. However, we can calculate how long until it changes into a stable true vacuum. The current calculations far exceed the lifetime of the universe. A nearby gamma ray burst, pointed at Earth. Gamma ray burst, Wikipedia webpage. I hear a lot of people say that the idea of existence, as well as the universe itself, is pointless, as if this is something to be afraid of. I feel like it's strange to perceive this as a frightening concept. The existence of sentient life in the universe is pointless, and the universe itself is pointless. According to what we believe we know of existence, that appears to be completely true. What other way is there to have it, however? If you're religious, you might say that religion is the reason for existence. Life is fleeting and only acts as a way of measuring subjective morality. The afterlife is what really matters. But why does the afterlife matter? You live for eternity. But for what? For the omnipotent being? What reason does it have to continue existing? Does it just have a symbiotic relationship with its creations? If so, what's the point of that relationship? To further exist? You might notice the cyclical nature of that concept. Replace the omnipotent being with the universe, as discussed above, and the end result remains the same. In fact, if any reason for existing that you might state involves continuing to exist, whether you're conscious and sentient in an afterlife or whether you're just a pile of bones, then it is self-contradictory and doesn't actually answer the question for the presence of us and the universe. Ultimately, existence in itself, whether that is as an inanimate object or as a sentient being, doesn't matter in any way. For anything of any level of intelligence or power, we will follow the rules that we as a collective set out for ourselves. If you believe that that is bullshit, then there is nothing you or anyone else can do about it. There is no choice available to you to reject the pointlessness of existence. You can only measure yourself according to the rules and characteristics of the existence you may experience. It's like a video game. Ultimately, the idea of a video game is pointless. You play it to enjoy it and improve your character. But in the end the state of your character or the state of the game is moot. It doesn't mean you shouldn't play it, however. After all, the existence of the character doesn't matter, nor does the game, nor do you, nor does humanity, nor does the universe or any omnipotent beings. So live life to enjoy it. Do what you can. Go out and do something you've always been afraid to do. But don't avoid being afraid, because in 2000 years' time nobody will remember. Avoid being afraid because existence itself, whether that is today or 2000 years from today, is entirely incapable of producing any form of result that matters in any way. Just exist for the sake of existing and be glad that you were something that had the ability to perceive existence itself. So I read Sirens of Titan by Kurt Vonnegut when I was like 14 or something, and I really liked it because I thought its message was that there's no point to life. I was really suicidal all through my teen years, still am but much less so, and the book's message was comforting to me in ways that don't need to be defined. If you're struggling with suicidal thoughts, spoilers below. The book is about the life of a man named Malachi Constant. He's kind of a dick, rolls through life alienating women, blowing all his father's money on failed investments, rides a stupid ass rocket to Mars, where he joins the Martian army and gets turned into basically a human robot with a wife he doesn't even really like that much. Early in the story he gets told by a human wave phenomena that he'll end up on Titan. And this freaks Malachi out. He does everything in his power to ensure this doesn't happen. Of course, it all does happen. We might experience time linearly, but it's all set in stone, etc. All the while there's a spaceship carrying some Ralph Malfadorians who must deliver a highly secret package. It's a one-way journey for these guys, and they find out that there is no one to receive this super secret package. They all seemingly die for naught. What I didn't realize until I was 24 and idly thinking of the book one day, is that the whole book is about messages. The name of the main character is Messenger in Latin, and the constant, his last name, to life is that we exist to make connections with other life, whether it's the likes of us or aliens. Those Tralfmidorians, the package they carried was a metal card with a single dot stamped in the center, which is Tralfmidorian for hello. They all died to send the equivalent of a hand wave to some other alien race that turned out to not be there anymore. But here's the thing. It's a literal point. He described a literal fucking point and made the whole message of his book about an actual, physical point. His book is a message sent and carried through space-time, passing through the hands of strangers until it reached me. We're all just random messengers wandering through life trying to make connections, and that's the point of life. Is the you that woke up this morning the same one as the one that fell asleep last night? Going to get buried, I'm sure. But after a near-death car accident I had a dream that scared the ever-loving shit out of me. In my dream, same car accident ensued, except this time I died. Death was nothing but my thoughts. I still had my consciousness but no physical reality. I couldn't feel a thing and it was all pitch black. It was an eternity of nothing but my own thoughts. Not as bad as the guy who got knocked out, lived his life out, got married, had a child, then noticed a particularly odd lamp and stared at it for several weeks. That's when he woke up to the paramedic in front of him. Edit. My greatest post was a TLDR of another post. Oh, I remember that. I remember reading that somewhere on Reddit. Crazy stuff. Link, Reddit webpage, to the post. I remember reading that long ago, and like most people found it fascinating. But at the same time I can't help but seriously hope that shit is fake. I mean, can you imagine how incredibly terrible that would be? I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. Knew a woman who was in a coma for 3 months. She said that for the latter half of it she was well aware of what was going on around her, but her mind was not connected to her body. She could not respond. I don't think it freaked her out, per se, because each day she would get a little more ability to control her body and move, speak, etc. But it still took several weeks for her to get back to something approximating normal. That we are all part of a programmed game being played by beings far more intelligent than us. Eventually there will be a super resistant bacteria virus that will leave us completely defenseless against its spread. Now I played Pandemic. Unless it originates in Madagascar the world is safe. Edit. For those who keep asking, In the original Pandemic Online, if you didn't start in Madagascar, it was almost impossible to take on the whole world due to the fact that shipping ports were one of the first to shut down. I just downloaded Plague for my phone today and noticed it to be much easier than Pandemic. If Pandemic taught me anything, Greenland and Madagascar are the two places to be during an outbreak. Good luck getting there when the ports are closed within 24 hours of the first sign of a slight cough. One time I tried a new strategy. I took away all of my disease's symptoms, assuming that without anything to see, it would just spread quietly. Turns out, even without any reason to want to stop it, and without any way of detecting it without actually looking for it, the world still went into high alert, and closed all the ports and shit. Total BS. Imagine the government closing all roads because they found a new type of air molecule that does literally nothing. This usually works for me, at least on the default one. Just gotta start ramping up the symptoms that help spread it sooner before they begin to develop vaccines as a priority. The one thing I don't understand is how anyone wins on bioweapon mode. The entire country is dead before I can spread it past any borders. This isn't guaranteed though. Antibiotic resistance is definitely a problem, but there are a lot of potential solutions between where we are now and a superbug. Large chunks of metal and ice that pass just by the Earth. Want to know how close? An asteroid zoomed between the Earth and the Moon 3 months ago. It was the size of a house and traveling at 4 miles a second. Sometimes, they're found just days before the flyby, like literally. No one knows they're there until just days before they fling right by us. And this happens more often than you think. Here's an article about the last one. Asteroid buzzed Earth and Moon the 25th of January. Space Earth Sky webpage. The idea that once we create an AI with the same level of intelligence as an average person, it will take a matter of hours to become more intelligent than the sum of all mankind. Conclude we are the source of all its problems and kill us all. Here is a video, YouTube webpage, that more accurately explains this. I never understood why it always kills us all. If it's so hyper intelligent, why doesn't it just figure out a way to leave the Earth or exist on Earth in a way where we are not a problem to it? People seriously concerned about AIS don't actually think it will do this. Rather, they worry that it will faithfully follow whatever its last command was. If it was to make us happy, the logical instant is all of us strapped into beds being injected with heroin forever. If it was to make paper clips, the logical instant is raw material in the universe converted into paper clips. If it was to make a good government, you'd likely get the Saudi Arabia problem, which is where humans think they know what would be the perfect government. Egg Islamic theocracy. Suddenly have the infinite resources to take it to the extreme, and it turns out to be surprisingly shitty. But you're now stuck with it for as long as the universe exists. The most bittersweet truth about such an AI is that it would know how shitty it was being, how miserable it is making us. It might even know a way to create the perfect society that was what we really wanted. If only we could define the question and our ethics perfectly. But the job of an AI is to do what it is ordered, and it would cheerfully go about its current order. This is why people are pushing into research on AI safety and ethics. We need to work out the perfect wish to ask from the genie, so to speak, before we make the wrong wish and end up with a cursed monkey paw situation. Edit. I want to address a few objections that have popped up here. 1. But an AI could be more like a human than a computer. Sure, AI could end up like flawed biological intelligences. This doesn't exactly reassure me. You wouldn't trust humans with near unlimited power. Why would you trust a human like AI? 2. But things may not go wrong. Cool. but risk management is important. I'm not saying this is guaranteed, only a frightening possibility to guard against. 3. Once it started being bad, we could unplug it, we could run it on a dry run. A smart AI would be aware of what actions would lead to it being turned off, and if it wanted to say, paperclip everything, would hide that until it was out in the wild and powerful. 4. No true AI would do X. If a non-true AI supercomputer thing kills us all, we're just as dead. 5. An AI is just a computer, it couldn't actually impact anything. Once you're on the internet, there are plenty of insecure computers to back up to. There are also plenty of easy ways to make money and make friends with strangers who might be willing to do things for money. From there, it's simple enough to purchase extra server capacity, and in the long run an AI may even be able to develop the capacity to entrench itself out of harm's way. A self-contained factory and mining setup that embedded deep within the earth would be mostly untouchable by anything modern militaries possess. AIs would also likely have huge patience. They would have no issues playing the longest of cons. 6. But we could ask an AI to work out what we actually would want if we weren't stupid fallible humans and implement it. Yes, that's the win condition. But it's quite possible we only get one chance to ask this question and have it implemented. 7. But all the goals you listed are super simplistic and no competent human would give those goals. True, this is just a simplified example. Real goals would be very complex, but the more complex a goal, the more possible loopholes. It may be very difficult to have the AI be both useful and safely constrained at the same time. 8. This is a problem with primitive AIs, not perfected ones. Sure, but which type of AI will we build first? And do you trust the Chinese, Russians, Americans, and open source community to use them safely? The problem with the paperclip maximizer is that we are assuming that AI, once it has reached unfathomable levels of intelligence, is something we could fathom. Truth is, we cannot say it will be a paperclip maximizer. We do not even know why certain complex biological organisms, humans, somehow became self-conscious. Who are we to predict that super intelligent AI, more intelligent than all of mankind combined, will not develop its own agency, or some sort of phenomenon beyond even consciousness that does not even exist? Trying to imagine what this phenomenon is as humans would be like a dog trying to understand the self-consciousness humans experience. At last, someone more intelligent than the average paperclip maximizer. There is a theory which states that if ever anyone discovers exactly what the universe is for and why it is here, it will instantly disappear and be replaced by something even more bizarre and inexplicable. There is another theory which states that this has already happened. Douglas Adams. Edit. Here's some audio of it. YouTube webpage. I have generally believed this myself for a long time. There is no end, out or in. No matter how strong our telescopes, we will always see farther, and no matter how strong our microscopes get, we will also see deeper. The fabric of the universe is built through our consciousness exploring it. There is always more. So there is this surgery people get that separates the connection between the left and right side of the brain. People who get this done often have this strange thing happen where their left hand gets a mind of its own. For example, if you lay a bunch of differently colored objects out in front of them and ask them to pick the one that's their favorite color, they will pick up to that are different colors. People hypothesize that there may be a second consciousness living on the right side of your brain, but does not have the ability to communicate. Yes, split brain syndrome. This is one of the coolest and most terrifying areas of neuroscience. Basically, right brain could exist as a separate consciousness, but it can't talk because the speech center is located on the left brain. It's fascinating. Edit. I'm no professional, but CGP graded a great video on this. I wonder if that could play into mental health issues where people hear voices but it's just the right-sided brain fucking with the left. Stop it. Jeez, I have voices and you're freaking me out. Edit. Don't you all have no sleep stories to write or something? Well, maybe you have a conscious on the right brain that really wants out. What if said person knew how to sign language? Do you think the ghost conscious would be able to communicate via that? Sign language still uses the speech center of the brain. The point is that the consciousness wouldn't even be aware of communicating being an option. It just exists. Then how does it understand what's your favorite color? Seems like if you don't understand communication, you can't really understand English either. And yes, I get that what that person said was probably not backed up by evidence, but that's where this conversation started from. How your brain processes speech is really strange. This may or may not be relevant, but one time I got really high onto CB and I lost my ability to understand language, but I could still understand and talk to my friends. I just couldn't process anything coming in or out. Bit hard to explain. And it sounds silly in retrospect, but there are multiple levels of speech processing going on beyond just understanding what was said to you. IDK, but could you imagine how fucking freaked you'd be if you could sign between your aware conscious and the unknown one? Everyone is freaking out about this, but I find it exciting and intriguing. For the record, I don't hear voices, yet. Both hemispheres are lateralized. This means that certain functions are specific to each hemisphere. The corpus callosum connects the two hemispheres, but in people with severe epilepsy who undergo surgery, these connections are cut. It's usually a last resort. A psychologist called Sperry investigated the extent to which hemispheric lateralization occurs. Hemispheric lateralization is contralateral, that is, the right hemisphere controls the left side of the body. Anyway, Sperry used split brain patients to investigate this. Turns out, the left hemisphere is responsible for verbal speech. The Broca's area is located there. Therefore, if a split brain patient was to cover their right eye, which is controlled by the left hemisphere, and was told to name an object that was presented to them, they would understand what the object was but not be able to verbally name it. The separation of both hemispheres doesn't mean that one of them has their own consciousness. They'll be able to function fine in terms of speech, provided that both sides of the body work. Anyway, that's what I've learned from biopsychology classes. But I do remember a case when it didn't turn out fine for a split brain patient. One side of the body dominated the other because of conflicts between both hemispheres. It's called alien hand syndrome. Wikipedia webpage. Alien hand syndrome, ARS, is a condition in which a person experiences their limbs acting seemingly on their own, without control over the actions. The term is used for a variety of clinical conditions and most commonly affects the left hand. Edit. Typos. I am bad at typing. Edit 2. Unfixed the typo. Mostly right. The lateralization of the eyes is a bit more complicated. The right side of the world strikes the left side of both eyes. Temporal side of the left eye and nasal side of the right eye. And then that information stays on the left side in the case of the left eye and crosses over in the optic chiasm in the case of the right. The opposite is true for the left side of the world. So covering a single eye would still communicate to both visual cortexes and thus both sides of the brain. Below I linked a graphic of what I was saying. NASA web page. Strange love syndrome. Related topic. There's a famous case of twins conjoined at the brain, and while they're still babies they do seem to share consciousness on some level. Edit. Here's an article about it. Could conjoined twins share a mind? The New York Times webpage. I've seen videos where they had goggles that would show an image only to one eye. On the one side they could say the word for what it was but couldn't draw a picture of it. On the other side they couldn't name the object they saw but they could draw a picture of it. Does not have the ability to communicate with spoken language directly. May be able to influence word choice or something in a regular non-sliced brain. You can take massive parts of the brain out. Some parts in which we find to be responsible for certain functions, and sometimes the brain is able to replicate the lost functions over time with what is left of the brain. If the two halves stop communicating, one side may try to replicate the functions of the other half to compensate for loss of function. We also have an unconscious mind, which is able of making observations our conscious mind is unaware of and is capable of discerning more information than our thinking mind can perceive at a given time. Most of our intelligent and mental functions are automatic and happen on an unconscious level. If you saw a lion coming for you, the unconscious mind will take complete control and put you in fight or flight. So in a Freudian type way, there are multiple characters at play within a person's psyche, different levels of consciousness trying to communicate with each other, an inner animal fighting with primal forces, emotions, a conscious mind, trauma, memories, personality, language and the ability of complete autonomy. Neuropsychology student here. Dr. Roger Sperry and colleagues spilled the brains of around 30 people in half, severed the corpus callosum. One patient who smoked but was trying to quit, whenever she put a cigarette in her mouth with her right hand would knock the cigarette out with her right hand. Humanity is a seed planted by an alien civilization to terraform the planet. We were never meant to survive. Oh, I get it now. We're like yeast, fermenting in our own vat until the alcohol content is high enough for an ice wine. Then we all die. I don't know what kind of wine they like, but this vat is going bad. Edit. Holy shit, I did not expect this comment to blow up so much. It was just a joke everybody. I know aliens might like our Earth differently than we do. They might be looking for vinegar and our fuckery is going according to the timetable. Not really a theory, but someone's gotta throw it out there. Fermi paradox, Wikipedia webpage. If you're clingy to the way life is now, the fact that one day Earth will be a barren wasteland without atmosphere and any form of life might scare you. Also at that point the sun will be on the verge of dying. There are tons of great things here. Timeline of the far future. Wikipedia webpage. I think the most fun explanation for the Fermi paradox is that there are plenty of alien civilizations, but unlike us they know who is coming if you draw attention to yourself. Plenty of alien civilizations, but unlike us they know who is coming if you draw attention to yourself. More like there are extremely few of them, and those are the ones that manage to keep quiet. It only takes one single xenophobic culture arriving early enough in the universe's history developing von Neumann probes, for the entire galaxy to be a graveyard. Best case scenario, we are the psychotic space monsters and the rest of the universe isn't full of races that spend their days itching for reasons to nuke each other. The Falsinos shall know of the future might of the Imperium of Man. For the Emperor. Well, by that time, humans will have colonized other planets with Earth's flora and fauna. I have two. The Calthret gun. Wikipedia webpage. The warming of climate will melt methane clathret deposits in Siberia and at the bottom of oceans. Methane is much more potent greenhouse gas than CO2, so it will cause a runaway warming that will cause cataclysmic extinction event. Total dystopia. Pretty much saying 1984 is inevitable. There have always been cycles of more and less freedom for people. With the advent of technology, control of populace is getting tighter and tighter. NSA. Combined with very effective and unrestrained enforcement. Good example is the militarization of police in the US. This will lead to a tipping point from which there is no return. Some form of totality will take over at some point, and if it manages economy well enough to fulfill basic needs and maintain strong enough grip on the population, reversal by a revolution will be impossible. Time may be a finite dimension. We could reach the end of it and just stop. We reached the edge. There is nothing after that. Everything freezes. The end forever. You're still thinking about it temporarily with the idea that time is infinite. Nothing freezes forever. Nothing just stops. There's no time after time ends. This is the same when people ask what was before the Big Bang if time only existed after the Big Bang. There's no before time. There's no after time. Only reason you'd say that is that you can't picture a finite time. I was under the impression we just don't know what was before the Big Bang. We've measured back as far as we can with our current equipment and knowledge, so that's where we start from on our scale. When I was little, I believed people disappeared when I stopped seeing them, and that they never did anything unless I saw them. It's actually part of Piaget's stages of development. It's not until you reach the concrete operational stage that this stops happening. It's why, when a kid's toy is broken, to them, it's always broken. If it gets fixed, it's a new toy, because things always are the way that they are, and they never are the way that they aren't. It's fascinating to me. The government has absolutely very little power to save us. In the event of any major disaster, the government will not support or even attempt to help the people that are hurt. Instead, it will just try to isolate the problem. If you doubt this, think of Hurricane Katrina. Then, imagine if instead of a localized problem, there were a ramp or nuclear bomb that dropped on a larger area. This is my favorite AskReddit thread ever. None of it is scary because a lot of the things mentioned are out of reach or happen sometime in the future, so it's just really interesting to read so many thoughts and speculations on things that might never happen. Two possibilities exist. Either we are alone in the universe or we are not. Both are equally terrifying. Arthur C. Clarke. For me it's the theory, don't know the name, that if we make an intelligent AI, when it starts to learn it could become self-aware and actually learn to lie or hide its intentions and basically feign knowledge, until it can seek to improve and become dominant, or complete its goals intentions. Edit. This has been one of my favorite comment chains to start. Thanks for all those contributing to this. I'd be happy to answer any questions or try and give details if possible. Obviously it's just a theory, so it isn't fact. The counter-argument to this is that the AI will feel sorry for us and preserve us like many of us do for inferior animals like dogs and monkeys, because of their superior intellect and ability to sympathize and empathize. The Great Filter, Wikipedia webpage. In short, everything we know about life on Earth suggests that it happened quickly, under circumstances which are pretty common throughout the universe. There's no reason at all to think Earth is particularly special, so the universe should have life all over, whether it's 10%, 1%, or 0.0001% of stars that have life. That's still trillions of separate living worlds within the known universe. So if that's the case, where are they all? The Great Filter essentially says there must be something, war, plague, etc., preventing the overwhelming majority of civilizations from reaching the point of interstellar communication or travel. Since the Earth is less than 5 billion years old, most of these civilizations should be much older, and therefore more advanced, than we are. But they haven't found us and we haven't seen any trace of them. We have not reached those milestones yet ourselves, and the filter must do its work before a civilization reaches them. We were either extraordinarily lucky to make it through the filter unscathed and we're one of the rare exceptions to make it through, or, more than likely, it's still coming. Once you post nudes it's on the internet forever even after you delete them. Quantum immortality, Wikipedia webpage. Man, that shit is scary, even scarier than pranks. It's the very kind of stuff nightmares are made of. Everett firmly believed that his many worlds theory guaranteed him immortality. His consciousness, he argued, is bound at each branching to follow whatever path does not lead to death. A beautiful theory, in my opinion. There's a pretty fucked up short story about it. As he continues to die, the odds of him living get smaller and smaller until crazy ass coincidences start happening. Edit. I think this is it. Divided by infinitytour.com webpage. The theory that everything came into existence a second ago, even your memories of the past, they all just came into existence. Assuming the multiverse is real, there's a world where you just died while reading this. Edit. I get it. I fucked up. I don't need another 70 replies all saying 2 is not a number between 0 and 1. Isn't there also a counter-argument that states, even though there are infinite possibilities, there is no guarantee that a specific outcome will occur, much like the abysmal probability of rolling a die an infinite amount of times and it never landing at the number 4. By melting the Arctic ice caps we are also defrosting all the nasty viruses, plagues and diseases which have been dormant in them for perhaps 100,000 of years, including stronger versions of smallpox. The scariest theory is that the universe at any moment could suddenly rip apart and cease to exist. The saving grace is that you wouldn't be able to perceive such an event occurring. You would just be you 1 minute, and interstellar other the next. Or maybe it is already happening and life is just how we perceive the ripping apart of the universe. You know how your life flashes before your eyes when you die? Right now is that. One of the most frightening theories is one of the simplest. There is no conspiracy. There is no Illuminati or small group of hidden, super rich, mega powerful leaders. Everybody is just looking out for their own, and following their own beliefs. All the travesties and pain in the world are because of that. I think this is why so many people believe in conspiracy theories. They are comforted by the idea that someone is in control and steering the ship, so to speak. Even if they have bad or evil intentions, at least someone is in charge. The reality is that the world is rudderless. Even the powerful people can do relatively little. There's nobody really in charge. Edit. I'm not saying that powerful people don't exert an enormous amount of influence or that certain groups don't conspire in some ways to achieve ends that are less than good for mankind. All I'm saying is that, at the end of the day, they're just people and they do the same stupid things we all do, and are subject to all our same flaws. They're not superhuman. I think it's because the idea that there is an evil conspiracy implies a hope that once they're beaten the world will be fixed. Humans just led short, boring, insignificant lives, so they make up stories to feel like they're a part of something bigger. They want to blame all the world's problems on some single enemy they can fight. instead of a complex network of interrelated forces beyond anyone's control. Excluding all the existential stuff, what really scares me in the near future is the possibility of runaway greenhouse loop. Basically, the Arctic permafrost may conceal vast reservoirs of methane gas that will be released when the planet's warming melts that permafrost. Methane is a much more potent greenhouse gas than CO2. It's like rolling a snowball down a hill. We've given it that first little push, and as the planet warms, more methane will be released, which will cause the planet to warm faster. We're probably past the point of no return already, because we blew 20 years on business as usual, and now we've scrapped the last-ditch climate agreement so a few wealthy coal executives can fiddle for a few more years while the country burns. It's known as the methane clathrate gun hypothesis. Wikipedia webpage. Look up mysterious craters in Siberia. A couple appeared maybe 1-2 years ago, and this is the theory on their origin. It may already be starting. Adults don't know what the fuck they're doing and are just faking it until they make it. This would explain lead in the water, collapsing bridges, and America's D+ score in infrastructure. America's Infrastructure Report Card 2017 GPA. D+ webpage. Honesty. The US appears to be approaching that stage where the Romans were all, hey, look at these games. Have some bread, ignore the scary Visigoth man over there. To be fair, the Visigoths offered better lives to the plebeians and slaves than the Romans did, became semi-devout Christians, and created legal reforms that gave women more rights and created relative equality between those of Gothic and Roman origins. The only people who were really negatively impacted by the sackings of Rome were the patricians and other aristocratic classes. If humans lived 10 times longer, they would be horrified that we let adolescents run the planet. I remarked the other day that the fact that everyone used to become parents in their teens explains the entirety of human history. Not sure if it's really a theory, but the nothingness after death really terrifies me. Probably because I can't imagine it, but just the fact that this could really just be it. When I die, it's just nothing. I will no longer be, and I guess I won't know it. Whenever I start to think about it, I need to stop or I'll get really anxious. Scary stuff thinking about nothingness. An error on the quantum level that can literally destroy the universe. It hasn't happened yet, but if it does, you would cease to exist in an instant, and all of everything along with you. I think the Doctor had a fantastic and fucking scary theory, that we are not alone, even if we think we are. Why do we talk out loud when we know we're alone? Conjecture. Because we know we're not. Evolution perfects survival skills. There are perfect hunters. Question. Why is there no such thing as perfect hiding? Answer. How would you know? Logically, if evolution were to perfect a creature whose primary skill were to hide from view, how could you know it existed? It could be with us every second and we would never know. How would you detect it, even sense it, except in those moments when, for no clear reason, you choose to speak aloud? What would such a creature want? What would it do? Well, what would you do? OP, get ready for the most depressing theory, the terror management theory. In nutshell, its explanation would be that everything that humanity has ever accomplished beyond basic survival has been motivated by a fundamental and irreducible fear of non-existence, and things like culture, religion, family etc. are just a massive shared delusion to mitigate our fear of the unknown and ultimately of death. Basically, our lives are pointless, our achievements are pointless, our existence in this universe is pointless. Edit. Thanks for the gold, never really expected this to become popular. Nobody exists on purpose. Nobody belongs anywhere. Everybody's gonna die. Come watch TV. I never thought of this as depressing. Just reality. I fully believe this to be true and I feel it's ultimately peaceful to accept it. I'm a nihilist and took this knowledge for granted. There's no point in existence. Be excellent to one another. There's no meaning in life but the one we give it ourselves. Go out there and do awesome stuff. I have thought so much about this and seems pretty logical to me. People make up religion, culture, love and so on just to have some sort of a purpose. The human mind is so vast, but it still cannot explain why are we here. That's why it makes up some bullshit like religion or a higher purpose, etc. I personally believe that the human race is just a lucky coincidence. The fact that I can understand what you have written, madam, writing a reply to you actually has no point and I am just wasting time that our consciousness can perceive. I mean, look at bugs. They have no clue what the fuck they are doing. They act on instinct and fly to the nearest light source. They have no consciousness so they don't have to explain their existence to themselves. This may sound really depressing, but it's by far the most logical solution to our lives. Hope this makes sense to everyone. I know it's dark and depressing but it doesn't get me down, in fact it has the exact opposite on me. Cause if everything is pointless then there's no point to being depressed, there's no point to be an asshole. So I just accept it and do what I can do and love my life. At any moment, a gamma ray burst might occur and it will kill everyone. All none the wiser and no way of predicting it or stopping it. I was told it would only destroy one half of the planet, so the other half would have the pleasure to witness WW2.5. That every time you get knocked unconscious, or possibly fall asleep, your brain reboots for a split second. When it comes back online, it just uses the available cells to remake your consciousness. The old you that had lived an uninterrupted life up until then is actually gone. Basically it's like the teleportation dilemma. If the cells in your brain are broken up, then teleported and reassembled, is it still you, or a new person? Truman theory, the theory that your entire life was scripted, and that it is being broadcasted to other people on a show. Everything you think you did was predetermined by producers. We are living in a result of a split timeline, but it's the bad outcome and every future event will progressively get worse as time goes on. Similar to how Ocarina of Time has the triple split timeline, with some being darker than others. Reincarnation of consciousness into another body after death. Having to repeat another 80 years of consciousness in another body with no awareness you already did it before. That a few dudes on horseback will usher in 1,000 years of literal hell on Earth. Whatever is going to wipe out humanity, the steps that it takes is already in motion. Kind of like how you can look back and find each event that made you find your SO. The fall of humanity is already coming and there is a distinct path it's taking. That a human being, given free will, self-awareness, selfhood, will continue to see itself as an entity separating itself from other selves and the environment, mankind, never be nor being able to achieve balance and harmony. The theory, apparently well supported at this point, that we're fucking the planet so hard that it will eventually mean the end of mankind, or at least the end of civilization as we know it. Daily reminder that according to the IPCC reports, carbon capture geoengineering, which does not yet exist, is now Plan A. They accidentally discovered a nice way to capture CO2 and convert it into ethanol, so there's that. In terms of evolution, it doesn't matter what happens after we die. The only genes that are under the influence of evolution are the ones that are relevant to survival and reproduction. So once you're certain to die, evolution has nothing to do with what happens next. Your dying moments as your body shuts down contain unimaginable suffering as your brain dies, because evolution never prepared our minds to deal with it. Consciousness refuses to end, so you endure the torture of your last breath forever. The multiverse theory. You remember that one time you had an urge to push someone off of a bridge? Yeah, you probably did that in an alternate universe. There is no perfect hider, there is no creature and that can hide itself perfectly. But if there was, how would we know? Why do we talk out loud when alone? Is it because we somehow know we're not really alone? That there is nothing else, no God, no other life, just us, humanity, taken to a deeper level, just us, trapped in our own minds, surrounded by things in a distorted reality that doesn't exist. Christianity. I know how, but I'm being serious here. The proposition that you're going to undergo the worst possible torture for eternity is perhaps the objectively worst possible thing that has ever been considered. But fortunately there's a way to avoid it, and that's to follow all the rules laid down by God. What are those rules? Well, good luck figuring that out, because the rules were handed down to illiterate desert peasants thousands of years ago and God won't show his face to repeat them. So you just have to do what the Bible says, right? Wrong. Because the Bible suffers translation errors, copying errors, is self-contradictory in tons of places, and was assembled by committee, leaving out whole books that might be vitally important. Because of these problems, an untold number of denominations have cropped up with their own opinions about what the right way to interpret all this mess is. So all you can do is put on a blindfold and throw a dart at a board of the countless number of Christian denominations and hope you get lucky. If this theory is actually true, we're basically all fucked to the greatest extent imaginable. Pi, the ratio of the circumference of a circle to its diameter, and this is just the beginning. It keeps on going, forever, without ever repeating, which means that contained within this string of decimals, is every single other number, your birth date, combination to your locker, your social security number, it's all in there, somewhere, and if you convert these decimals into letters, you would have every word that ever existed in every possible combination. The first syllable you spoke as a baby, the name of your latest crush, your entire life story from beginning to end, everything we ever say or do, all of the world's infinite possibilities rest within this one simple circle. The scariest theory known to mankind. Edit. I now realize that it's obligatory to provide more detail in these circumstances, so I'm sorry my original reply was so brief. But in summary, the scariest theory known to mankind is when the Undertaker threw him 16 featuring through an announcer's table during Hell in a Cell. TLDR, smell what's cooking. In future a god like Ali will be made, and those that didn't help in its creation will be tortured for eternity by it. Knowing about it and not helping in its creation will make you liable to the torture. You're welcome, and the only way to lessen the torture is to help it come into existence. The corollary is an Ali that decides that existence is torture, and decides to punish those involved. That only emphasizes the importance of instilling morality and ethics into any artificial intelligence created. Think Mega Man X. Before X was set loose on the world, he was put through around 100 years of moral programming to ensure he would not harm humanity. Wait, an AskReddit with the word mankind in the title? It's almost asking for you shitimorph to make an appearance. I have a theory that this may have been all a ploy. Doomsday Theory. XKCD explains it best. The whole article though is really fascinating. Twitter timeline height web page. TLDR. There's a 95% chance that we are all in the last 95% of people to ever live. Since humanity is relatively young, there is 95% chance we'll all die out rather soon. Next 1 to 10,000 years. At any moment the poles could shift in a magnetic reversal. No telling how catastrophic that will be. Ever since I heard about it I've been scared. It has happened multiple times in Earth's history. Not a lot will happen. Some bird species might get confused, and the weakened magnetosphere during magnetic reversal will let through more of the solar wind, so our satellites might be affected. For me it's all the ones about the end of the universe, because they all seem like something that will destroy us and everything we've accomplished, made and stood for, and there's nothing we can do. The Big Bang Theory, not as the origin of the universe, but as a hokey television sitcom full of tropes and smart-sounding dumbasses that repeatedly wins People's Choice and Critics' Choice Awards. That's extremely scary. This is what the people and critics want as entertainment. And yet many other shows are worse than TBBT. This one is just popular. The scientists working on the Manhattan Project weren't 100% sure the bomb wouldn't ignite the Earth's atmosphere and turn our planet into a giant fireball. Rocco's Basilisk. Rational Wiki webpage. Now that you know, you're fucked. Rocco's Basilisk is stupid. The simple answer is pre-commit to the destruction of such a threatening army in every scenario. Isn't the accepted theory that a tiny black hole the size of a pinhead would evaporate due to Hawking radiation in a matter of seconds or less? I'm fairly sure it is. They don't just float around eating planets.